One morning, everything I loved turned to ash. That day, I thought I'd hit the deepest pit of despair. When loss didn't just take away someone I loved, but also the very reason to keep breathing. Every passing hour felt like a blade twisting deeper. A cruel reminder that life never warns you before the storm hits. What I didn't know back then was that this very worst moment would become the beginning of a miracle. One I would later call the greatest gift I'd ever received. One morning, everything I loved turned to ash. A short message from the hospital stopped my heart mid-beat. "We're so sorry." I didn't hear the rest, but my brain understood perfectly. The one person who had always been there, who believed in me when the whole world turned its back, was gone. No goodbye. No last chance to hold them. The house was still full of furniture, but empty of warmth. The wooden chair by the window sat hollow. The teacup still on the table, stone cold, mocking me as if it were all just a bad dream. I told myself, just close your eyes, and when you wake, everything will be back the way it was. But the next morning, and the mornings after that, the emptiness was still sitting at the table. In those early days, I moved like a shadow. Every sound was too loud. Every light too harsh. I began to hate the sunrise because it forced me to wake up and remember I was living in a version of life I never wanted. Loss isn't just the absence of someone. It's an invisible hollow that seeps into every habit, every corner of the room, every breath you take. I felt myself thrown off course. Work scattered into pieces. Friends grew quiet, not knowing what to say. I didn't want them to say anything. I just wanted someone to return my past to me. But life doesn't offer a refund policy for memories. I used to think I was strong. But in those sleepless nights, I learned that strength means nothing when a storm you never saw coming tears the sky you trusted wide open. What I didn't know, this was only the first step into a journey fate was quietly pushing me toward. A journey to find the greatest gift, wrapped in the crumpled paper of pain. After the funeral, I shut myself away in a small room, like a wounded animal retreating into its den. But grief doesn't stay silent. It knocks on your door every night, whispering reminders of what you've lost. There were moments I thought, maybe if I just disappeared too, I could stop feeling this emptiness. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from an old friend, asking if I'd help a volunteer group in the mountains. At first, I said no. I didn't have the strength for anyone, not even myself. But somehow, I ended up saying yes. Maybe just to escape the four walls that were slowly closing in on me. The ride up the mountain was long and bumpy, each sharp turn peeling away a layer of the cold shell I'd been hiding inside. Up there, I met sunburned faces and calloused hands with warm, steady eyes. They didn't know my story, and they didn't ask. They simply invited me to help. Cook a meal, carry a sack of rice, rebuild a roof blown off by the wind. At night, by the fire, I listened to them talk about floods, failed harvests, and how they laughed after every story. It wasn't a fake laugh. It was acceptance. The kind of strength I thought I'd lost. I started noticing the small things. The smell of smoke in my clothes. Children's voices calling to each other in the yard. Raindrops clinging to palm leaves. Each detail felt like stitching up a tear inside me. Not erasing the pain, but reshaping it, so it was no longer as sharp. This journey has no map. I still don't know what I'm looking for. But for the first time since it all happened, I feel like I'm walking again. Still in the dark. But somehow, the dark feels less frightening. One drizzly morning, our group went to visit an elderly woman living alone at the end of the village. Her house leaned and creaked, wind sneaking through every corner. Yet she smiled when she saw us. We gave her a little rice, some cooking oil, and a warm blanket. When I asked, "Aren't you lonely living by yourself?" she chuckled softly and said, "Lonely, yes. But loneliness is also a friend. It reminds me that I once loved and was loved." Her words pierced through the fog in my mind like a needle. I realized then, loss isn't just a full stop. It's also proof that something beautiful and meaningful once existed, something worth mourning. Pain isn't an enemy, it's a messenger, leading me to doors I never dared to open. That afternoon, as the sun peeked through, I sat alone on a grassy slope. Light streamed through gray clouds, shining down on rain-soaked fields. I understood something I hadn't before. I had been fighting to forget. But perhaps what I needed was to accept it, to carry it with me. I thought of the person I lost. For the first time, the memory didn't suffocate me. Instead, it felt warm, like a small flame. Maybe the worst thing I've gone through quietly taught me how to see life differently, to value both the light and the shadows. As night fell, sitting by the fire, I smiled at the crackle of burning wood. The darkness was still there, but now it was a backdrop for the light to shine. For the first time since it all happened, I felt genuinely lighter inside. I don't know how this journey will end, but I know one thing. I will not return as the person who left home in despair that day. The day I returned, the city greeted me with familiar streets and the harsh blare of car horns. Everything seemed unchanged except me. I no longer walked like a shadow, though there was still an emptiness inside. It was no longer a bottomless pit that could swallow me whole. It had become a part of me, like a scar, proof that I had survived. I began organizing my apartment. The wooden chair by the window was still there, but now I placed a small potted plant on it. Each morning, instead of staring at the empty space and remembering what I had lost, I watered the plant, letting green shoots reach upward. The cold cup of tea from that day was replaced by a fresh pot, fragrant and steaming. A quiet greeting to the present. Friends were surprised when I started calling them to eat, to walk. I didn't share much about the trip, but the perceptive ones noticed something new in my eyes. A peace that was hard to describe. I also began volunteering in the city. Not to forget the pain, but because I understood what it felt like to have someone reach out in the darkness. I learned to listen more, to be patient, and no longer feared when someone mentioned death or parting. I understood that they were not full stops, but part of a larger story. In the evenings, sitting by the window watching the streets below, I still thought of the person I had lost. But instead of closing my heart, I silently thanked them. If that day of loss hadn't happened, I would never have taken the bus to the mountains, never heard the words of the elderly woman, and never learned to keep the light alive inside me. Even when everything around was darkness, I returned, carrying that invisible gift, a treasure I could never lose. Time moves on, and life doesn't slow down for me. New challenges still arrive, work pressures, relationships that don't turn out as expected, long evenings returning home exhausted. But now, I no longer panic at these changes. I know they will all pass, just like the storm years ago, though at the time, it felt impossible. I still keep the habit of making tea every morning. When the steam rises, I take a deep breath, feeling as if I am giving myself a fresh start. On free days, I visit the volunteer group, continuing to help repair houses, distribute rice, or simply sit and listen to someone's story. I realize that I'm not just helping them, they're helping me too, reminding me that I am still useful, still alive. The pain of loss is still there, but it has changed shape. It has become a gentle part of memory, reminding me of love, connection, and the value of every moment. I don't try to forget it, nor do I cling to it. I've learned to walk alongside it, like a silent companion. Sometimes, in the quiet of night, I think about that fateful day, the day the worst thing happened. If I could turn back time, I would still want to keep my loved one. But I also understand that this tragedy opened a door I had never seen before, a door leading to understanding, gratitude, and the strength to stand firm through storms. Now, when I look back, I call it the greatest gift. Not because loss is something to wish for, but because it gave me something that no peaceful day ever could, the ability to truly live on. Perhaps we are never truly ready for loss. But I have learned that pain doesn't just break us, it can also open a new part of ourselves, one we never knew existed. Life will always have moments that knock us down. There will be days when the light seems to vanish completely. Yet even in the deepest darkness, small rays of light slip through if we are willing to open our eyes and see them. If you find yourself in the middle of a storm, don't rush to think you've lost everything. Maybe you are standing right in front of a gift that only time and courage can reveal. Because when we learn to walk alongside our pain, instead of fighting it, we come to understand this: living on is not about forgetting, it's about turning memory into a guiding flame. And in that moment, the worst thing that happened can become the most beautiful thing we carry with us.